Do you want me to start the computer camera? Or is it on? Okay. Okay. There isn't a bell for me to ring, so I'm just going to get started. Welcome to the March 7th meeting of the Rotary Club of Ames. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And let's take some time to keep in our thoughts the people that are suffering from loss from the tornadoes this weekend. Let's also keep in our thoughts Ukraine. Is there anyone else that we should be thinking about at this time? Yep, go ahead.
I think many of you may know
Herb Harmison passed away yesterday, so let's keep him and Saturday, keep him and his family in our thoughts. Thank you. You can be seated. At this time, I'm going to invite Jeff up. Yes. Oh, at this time, I'm going to introduce Dave Hansen to the microphone. Do you want him to come up now? Sheldon Spencer, you can go ahead and come up with Dave.
I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Sheldon Spencer, neurologist. You already know him because I'm sure you were all here for the program about 3 weeks ago on the brain and memory, why we forget, and what we can do to counteract that. Mostly greater self-discipline. Along the lines that I've forgotten is what was said in the introduction. So you may get some repetition here. Sheldon has wife Jean and 3 children who have scattered away from Iowa, and a small farm in Hamilton County. Joined McFarland Clinic in 1990. What you don't know is he got a BA from the Allegheny College in Pennsylvania in chemistry. He says that was crazy. Actually, his major was religion and philosophy. He had a bit of a minor in chemistry, so he suspects maybe some heretic changed his diploma because it might look more favorable in his application for medical school. And then the next 6 years I traced, he spent teaching, welding, and wandering until he entered the medical school at University of North Dakota. Has an impressive list of research publications that as an economist I can't pronounce. He is already dedicated to the Rotary motto of service above self. Very active in the Collegiate Presbyterian Church, on the Story County Water Commission, and of course, a member of ASIP, the Ames Sanctuary Interfaith Partners. His teaching and service work include contributions in Afghanistan, Ecuador, Haiti, and support of the Ames Free Medical Clinic. Has a long list of recognitions. I'm just going to take a couple from last year. He was elected Fellow of the American Academy of Neurology. Also received the Humanitarian Award of the Iowa Medical Society. So I just wanted to end with what really attracted him to Rotary, and that had to do with its global work for peace. His timing in this introduction into Rotary is really exceptional. 10 days ago, the Rotary International Foundation sent a global message of Rotary's deep concern for the humanitarian condition happening in Ukraine. But beyond their statement of concern, the Rotary Foundation created a global channel for direct human support in Ukraine, for members all around the world to contribute, knowing that every single cent would go to relief. Please check out their disaster response fund for contributions. It will be open until April of 2023. Moreover, they encouraged all clubs to create their own response to the humanitarian crisis. Sheldon, welcome for Rotary, and I hope you can help our club become more engaged in peace activities. Now the charge.
Dr. Spencer, fellow Rotarians. Dr. Spencer, I don't know if you remember the first time we met, but at that time you told me my brain was shrinking. My wife has been telling me that for as long as we've been together, but that was a revelation to me. But I felt better after your address the other day when you told all of us that our brains are shrinking. So I'm in good company. It is my duty to provide you the charge and welcome you to Rotary. As you know, you've already drunk the Kool-Aid. You know what a great international footprint this organization has. We do great things locally as well. The Ames Miracle Field and Playground was one of our signature events. And so it's a great organization. Lots of great people in this room. Get to know them, every one of them. They all have a story, and they've all made impact. So we welcome you to this club. We know you're going to be a great fit. Help us get better. And folks, please welcome Dr. Spencer to the Ames Rotary Club.
I am going to say something very quickly. Thank you very much. This is really complicated. Why now? Why did I want to join Rotary at this point? It's a little bit of a convoluted story, but I think you might find it interesting. I have a very close colleague of mine who I've known since we were adolescents wandering, and he is a professor of peace and sustainability at Colorado State University. He and I went together on a trip sponsored by the Presbyterian Church to Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia in 2019, focused on the idea of encouraging peace. I'm impressed with Bill Timpson's work. He's a member of Rotary out. Then when I had a chance to visit with David, I kind of said, you know, this is a no-brainer. This is a good place for me to be. And hopefully David and I will annoy you a lot as we go along. Anyway, I really appreciate the opportunity to join you and look forward for the future. Thank you.
Well, what better way to welcome Dr. Spencer than with a song?
Every week we sing the welcome song, and it's especially for the guests and visitors who are with us. So please join with me, sing out, and Louie as we sing the welcome song. Welcome to you from Ames Rotary, Naveda, London, or Gayperi, from far off lands or the USA. We're glad that you are here today. Come back again whenever you're near. Join us and then we'll make it clear. Around the world you will always be. Welcome at Rotary.
And maybe we'll keep you guys up here so we can wish a happy birthday to our March birthday.
Yes,
Birthday bodies.
again, join in. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Rotarians. Happy birthday to you.
Happy anniversary to these March wedding people. Happy anniversary. Okay, is Riney here today? 62 years. You're tuning in. Thanks for being a Rotarian, Riney. Steve Goodhue, 26 years. Roger Mahary. I'm 16 years. Wow. Thank you all for being a Rotarian, even if it's just 2 years. 62 and 2. Cool. At this time, if you're interested in contributing to the Rotary Foundation Disaster Response Fund, you can make a check out and give it to, you can send it to this address, or I assume, Karen, you could help with this as well if someone needs help navigating that. But if you are interested in contributing to the Ukraine disaster relief, you can make a check out and send it to that PO box. Upcoming meetings. Now, I love the Alumni Center, but this stage, Tammy, I'm feeling a little different up here. Just kidding, Jeff. We still love the Alumni Center. All right, but the week of March 21st, maybe a social, maybe. Depends on where we're at in the tournament, I guess. Let's Wood. And then after that, we're back in person at the Alumni Center. This time, I would like to invite Kent up to introduce our speakers.
I want to thank you all for being here today. It's just an honor to address each and every one of you. It's quite a sight, isn't it? You're not supposed to have your back to the audience, so I apologize for that. It is with a real pleasure today that we get to celebrate again a special time in You Are Rotary, a time when we get to hear some from our own people, so we get to know them better and hopefully they get to know us better. With that, today we have 6 distinguished individuals sharing with us today. And you know what? I don't have any particular order, but I think since I saw a birthday up there, Maynard, where did you go to? Maynard, we'll call Maynard. Come on up. You're the next contestant on You Are Rotary. Mr. Maynard Holberg.
I didn't know if that meant I was going to be first or last. I was just glad that my good friend Paul Lashley's still in Arizona fighting rattlesnakes rather than being up here fighting the snow. I heard from him this morning. He said they just killed a 5-foot one in this park he's in. So he was a little bit he thought it was better than dealing with that than dealing with the snow that we had here. As I looked through the timeline we had that Kent gave us, I said, I better make this short because otherwise we'll never get everybody. Because I know some people on that list like to talk a lot more than I do. And so I'll make mine rather short. But just to give you a little of my background, I grew up in Southwest Iowa on a small farm there in Montgomery County. Went to school at a small school called Stanton. It still has its own public school. It hasn't consolidated. It's a bunch of tough Swedes down there. They're very independent. My wife says I come by it naturally, that independence. But when I grew up there, I only had one option really for education. You're going to Iowa State. And today's students will make trips around the United States, checking out all these different universities to see which ones they go to. My parents just put me in the car with another neighbor that was taking his daughter back to school and says, you're going to school. And so that's kind of how times have changed a lot. I got my bachelor's degree here and then spent 4 years in Ida Grove teaching school there, and then had opportunity. Yes, go. And then came back on staff as an instructor and in graduate school here at Iowa State and got my master's and PhD here. Following that, I went on to Michigan State University and spent 27 years on faculty there. First as a faculty member, and then succumbed to being an administrator. Then for the last 18 years, I was there trying to build a program in the Department of Animal Science. That was kind of, I guess, the thing I really enjoyed, but there was a lot of trying moments trying to take a program and build it to make it better than when you found it, and serving the needs of the people there. In 2003, I returned to Iowa State as Department Chair of Animal Science here, and then retired 7 years ago. So some of the questions that Kent gave us, and I just picked a few of them, Kent, because there are some of them that we don't want to talk about. Said, what was the most important thing that happened to me there? And I'm going to give you two things that I think throughout my career. One was in 1966, as I was graduating with my bachelor's degree, I went on the ag travel course throughout Europe. That opened my eyes to a much broader world that we live in. And I had no comprehensive what that was going to be like until I went. And by just having that experience came back, and that set the tone for a lot of the work that I've done and the opportunities I've had throughout my career, being able to not only travel through continental Europe, but also into Zimbabwe and Thailand and Japan and China, Scotland, Ireland, England, various places, Mediterranean, because all those things gave you a different perspective of cultures, a different perspective of people. And the one thing you find, no matter where you're at, people are genuinely good people. And you really appreciate that. We sometimes have problems with government and government parties, but the people themselves are up, and I read the information because it was really gave me a better understanding of that. The second thing I want to say that's most important to me was that I really had mentors throughout my whole life. And those mentors guided me. I don't know what they saw in me, but they took the time to help me, give me advice, give me direction. And I give a lot of credit to them for any successes I had, because I think they prepared me for some of the things that I became involved with. Why did I become a Rotarian? Well, early on when I was teaching in high school, I was a member of service clubs, then had time to do that. Afterwards, my travel schedules and that just made it almost impossible. And so when I retired, I got coerced, drugged by President Winterstein and Paul Lastly, saying, now you need to become a Rotary. become a member of Rotary. And I think they wanted me to drive so they could get a ride. I really think that was the reason behind that. But essentially it was the theme of service above self was not foreign to me. I kind of grew up in that in the family that I grew up in. It was service above self. And that was the way I was taught. That was the way I grew up. And consequently, throughout my career, my most satisfaction has been is when can I help other people become better? And I got the biggest rewards myself is to seeing other people grow and develop and become better. That's probably why I veered toward a career in teaching, extension, and possibly even administration, even though I drug my feet about getting into administration. But even there, I found that if you can make people around you better, make them successful, that's the reward you get. And as administrator, I always had the philosophy, I'm going to hire people that are better and more skilled than I, and that was really an easy task for me because about everybody I hired was pretty easy to find people that way. But believe me, that most people want to be successful and have a purpose in life. And the ones I've been most impressed with over time have been those that have really had that servant leadership capabilities and demonstrated that. Those are the ones I really appreciated, the ones I really like working with and being involved with. And I really that really creates this service above self attitude that I think we have here in Rotary. So who's impressed me most with what they've accomplished? Well, one of them has been our university president, Winterstein. Best administrator I ever worked with, but she and I could get a lot of problems solved because she had the ability to see through those, where we need to go and how do we find ways to get the job done and make things better. She's a great listener and she always treated people with respect. And those kind of qualities, I think when you have that in people, it's really good to, it's fun to work with. And just recently, I was asked to write a foreword for a book. A good friend of mine from Michigan had just retired 4 years ago, and he's a great storyteller, but he worked with the Michigan Pork Producers Association there as their executive. He's originally from Ohio, and his family and his colleagues invited him encouraged him to write his memoirs down. And so I just got through writing that forward this weekend and sent it to him. But again, another one of those servant leaders that I was so impressed with over time because he never took credit for himself. He was always the credit to everybody else and got them involved. And I think that's the type of thing I constantly look for, in not only administrators, but in faculty too, that really want to, if we're going to have people who have that kind of a philosophy, they're going to be better off. So Kent, that's going to be it.
Thank you, Maynard. You're an inspiration to us and appreciate that. Next, I want to call forward Miss Liz Beck. Liz has more titles after her name than anyone else I know, Liz. So we could just listen to that for the next 10 minutes. We'll look forward to Elizabeth's story. Thank you, Liz.
So I am on my 8th job since retirement, but I'm due to finish at the end of the month. So hang in there. I'm not planning on working again, I think. And I'm not retiring. My contract ended because nobody's giving me a retirement party anymore. And they're saying I have to pay for it and I can't afford it. So to begin with, my story, you should know that I grew up in a Rotary home. During my childhood, my father was a Rotarian and Rotary was a weekly evening dinner meeting. I can't remember which night of the week it was, but the Rotary night was when my mother would prepare the 2 meals my father refused to eat: liver and onions and macaroni and cheese. So they alternated every other week for most of my childhood. In fact, I think since I could eat solid food until I went to college, was what we had. My first Rotary meeting was in 1953 when my father was president and I was 9 years old. So my brother and I and two of our friends were invited to do a program. We did a marionette show, and we did a marionette show for Rotary every year for 3 years. And this is one of my marionettes. This is Madam, whatever her name was. And she is an opera singer. She has now retired and she lives in my basement. Okay. I don't know why I saved that marionette. I've wondered that for years, but when I put this little talk together, this was absolutely the perfect reason to save her. So we're not quite up to the quality of the Bill Baird marionettes, but we were pretty good. So I chose 6 of those questions. And what is my favorite place that I would be, and where would I and why? So I've been fortunate to do a lot of traveling, especially off the beaten path. And like Maynard, it's changed my life. I've gotten to see the world and spend enough time in places to get a sense of the people and the culture. Places like Tibet, Easter Island, and North Vietnam. So it's difficult for me to choose just one place. But as Somerset Maugham said, I do not bring back from a journey quite the same self that I took. So if I had a chance to name 3 places that I would return to, it would be Iceland, because it's a place where the geography, the geology, the culture, and the social structures are so totally integrated, you can't pull them apart. Patagonia, which is the southern third of South America, because of its absolute wildness and the isolation and the strength of the people who live there, including a very, very strong, significant Croatian villages. And Florence, Italy. Because every time I worked in Florence and I walked to and from work, I was surrounded by the magnificence of the Renaissance art and architecture, the exquisite food choices, amazing, and the charm and delight of the Italian and Florentine people. What's the best advice that I've received and why? I received a lot of advice from my parents, but the one that stands out the best is, quote, "You are a person who has so much, so you are obligated to be kind and to be generous." And I continue to smile. Okay, I'm 77 years old, but when someone gives me a gift or a kindness, I hear in my head my mother saying, "You are not going to any party until you finished your thank you notes." I don't know how many else hear your mother or your father in your head, and you're thinking, I'm an adult now. I don't have to. Okay, I'll write my thank you notes. What do I want to be remembered for? I really want to be remembered as a woman of integrity and respected as a role model, and that I made somebody's life change. Why did I become a Rotarian? Here's how it played out in our house. I had my full-time job as the director of the University Honors Program, and then I got asked to be a half-time administrator in the president's office under Dr. Jiske. I had no half-time replacement for my honors position, and I was sinking. John Dasher, one of our former District 6000 governors and a highly respected community member, called me one night and asked me to join Rotary. I hung up the phone and I turned to my husband and I said, "Here's what John asked me, and I just can't do it. I'm sinking." And Alice looked at me and said, "When John Dasher asks you to do something, you do it." And so I did. And of course, it's been a terrific ride, and particularly because of all the students that I've been able to work with as we've moved through the Rotary Global Scholarships. Service above self, again, like Maynard, was a major part of my upbringing with my parents. And so here's the way I think about it. We can all contribute something, our time, our talent, or our treasury. When you are able to help and when you are able to make a difference, then you have no choice but to step up. What's the best thing about getting older? I have two quotes that are mounted above my office space, above my work desk. My master's thesis from Iowa State is on the constitutional crisis of the Roman Republic. There was an article in the Atlantic a few months ago comparing where we are now with the crisis in the Roman Republic, if you're interested in finding out how close we are. But Cicero was my favorite orator, and he said, old age is even more confident and courageous than youth. But I want to leave you with the quote from Dorothy Sayers. Time and trouble will tame an advanced young woman, but an advanced old woman is uncontrollable by any earthly force. Thank you.
By the way, Liz, we're looking at programs for next year. No. Oh, I just think it would be highly entertaining. We look forward sometime to hearing more about the Marinettes. It will be now my pleasure to introduce Barbara Woods. Barbara, if you'll come forward, and we'll look forward to hearing your story.
Hello, everyone. I didn't know that I've got a great story. I can be funny at times. I'm not going to try to be today. Try to be fairly serious. Probably, I've been here for a long time in Ames, more than half of my life. I was not born in Iowa. I was actually born in Alabama in the early 50s during deep segregation. So my perspective is skewed by that environment. What you don't know is I grew up in an all-white neighborhood. So from a small child, I had no concept that people were different because who was in my neighborhood were Black and white, and we were the only family. So grew up in a little town called Alexander City. Does anybody know what Russ Athletic is? Have you heard of it? It's a company that used to do all of the work for uniforms for teams. That was founded in my hometown. And I worked there as a student, which said, you will go to college because you do not want to work in the factory. So I never had to worry about failing. But I grew up in started school in 1959, went to a all-Black school, and a traumatic experience for me was that I had and I'd never been away, and I moved to an all-Black section of town. And I'm still, I would say, traumatized by that experience, because to not be in a familiar place is a very difficult thing. But it also made it easier to come to Iowa. So when people ask me, how can you stay in Iowa? It's just like home. You know, I remember home, and so it's not a difficult thing. But again, grew up in Alexander City, which is a small town which has had Russ Athletics in it for many years. It is now owned by Warren Buffett and part of Fruit of the Loom. So I would just say, if you used to buy fruit or any kind of underwear stuff and you thought, I'm going to buy Hanes because it's better than Y, it's all the same. That's what you learn working in the factory. Graduated from high school at Benny Russell in the first class in which you had no choice. Remember, 1954, Brown versus Board of Education. We changed the rules, but in my hometown, it did not go into effect until 1970. So my class is the first class at which you had no choice. We had one high school. So I'm a product of an environment that was predominantly Black in its education early on, but very different once I got to senior level. Had two experiences around higher education. I went to a historically Black institution, which is in 1890, Alabama A&M, and I graduated from in 1862, which is Iowa State. So when we talk about history and we talk about land grant, those are two of the groups, plus the 1994s. I graduated from college as an undergraduate and a master's from Alabama A&M, worked for the Alabama Extension Service. I celebrated this past September, 43 years of working for the Cooperative Extension Service, 40 of them here in Iowa, and I still work for them. I had a unique experience when I was in graduate school. I come out of home economics, which is a female-dominated profession. But I had a wonderful experience here as a graduate student. I had a professor who was just out of graduate school. She had a PhD in home economics, a minor in mathematics and computer science. So I got a once-in-a-lifetime experience, is that I was the first female in the US to work at a land grant institution in the Extension Service who headed up the computer system. And I have to give applause to the person who hired me. Dr. Gorin hired me 40 years ago. What the questions talked about, to give some insights into what you think. So the question said, what would you like to master? I don't really want to master any particular thing because I don't want to be that good. But what I'd like to do is get better at Spanish, because I think it's important to speak another language. Spanish might be the one that I can build a little bit on. The rest of them, I'm not going to even give it a try. I did take Spanish in high school, but if you don't use it, you lose it. I would say for my favorite place in the world would be Nicaragua. Why? I've probably gone 9, 10, 12 times as part of a mission that works with healthcare. And what they do is train people to be health promoters. That means someone who can read. No offense to physicians, but at the base level, these folks who can barely read, but can read enough to take instructions, are able to give service in their local communities, which are typically very rural. And that country had at one time the highest rate of deaths of babies within the first year. It is now abnormal for a baby to die in that country because of poor healthcare. And it's all done because some professional physicians do train the local folks to help in those communities. And the fun for me is going to a community without any resources, meaning it is the skill of the people and the ability to work that make things happen. And as a volunteer, you get to leave your education in Iowa. I do. Privilege in Iowa, and I get to go someplace where all they need is my hands and my feet, because they need help. They don't need me telling them what to do. So I'm fascinated by that approach to helping people. Leave the knowledge at home, except for what you can do to help, but don't go there in charge. It's liberating to be told what to do and make it work. I like that. So I would go to Nicaragua multiple times per year. COVID is preventing it at the moment. What is something that I've learned that sticks with me? My mother was not well educated, but was fun. She used to say, it takes 6 months to mind your business and 6 months to leave everybody else's alone. So I don't gossip. It's rare that I will take a message. So people will ask me what was said, and I'm thinking, I don't know what was said. And truthfully, I don't know what was said because I didn't grow up that way. I grew up saying, mind your own business. 6 months to mind yours, 6 months to leave everybody else's alone. So I still practice that. I'm not good at gossiping, so you could tell me anything. I guarantee you, you will not hear it again. There was a question about what has impacted me. I like to volunteer in. I've been around Ames and I've always volunteered. One of my favorite things that happened unbeknownst to me is I worked on habitat projects for many years and would work on the site with all men and myself. I applaud the men, one, because they never said you can't do anything, And they never said, don't cut yourself. So I learned a lot of things working with them. But out of that privilege of being able to work on those Saturdays, so $1,000. And I was like, I got a call saying somebody's giving $45,000 in your honor. And I thought, somebody's sick and they've got too much money. But it was a privilege because I had worked and working with no intent to get anything back from it. So I'm always pleased to think about that as it is in doing your work that other people can make choices to help other people. What are 3 interesting things about me? Probably lots of them, but my 3 interesting things are I grow roses. I've won prizes for growing them. And we've had some fundraisers in the town where I put them in and people bid a good amount of money and they got fresh rose bouquets every so often. Another thing is I don't look like it, but I did complete Dam to Dam. I live to tell about it. And I take the approach, they don't have to worry, I will not be coming back. Once done, no more. And I would say that I make the best peanut brittle. Even for people who wear dentures, you can eat it and it doesn't pull your dentures out. I don't really have anything on my bucket list because I made it a practice all through my career, even though I worked really hard and extension is a hard place to work in the sense you don't have a schedule. But I always made it my business to volunteer, to travel, to do all those things because I did not want to get to an age and not be able to travel and do things. So as I think about at some point retiring, I don't have a bucket list. I've done everything I wanted to do. And so I don't want to get paid for anything. I just want to be free to do what I want to do. About Rotary involvement, how did I come into Rotary? I worked for Bob Anderson. He came into Extension as head, and I worked for him. And part of his administrative team, he wanted us to participate in the community. So he was coming to Rotary. So I got stuck coming to Rotary with him, which he could ask questions, but regardless. So I joined because of Bob Anderson and all. But really, because I'm service oriented, it was not something that did not work for me. I enjoy when we work together as small groups or whatever, and we physically do something that makes a difference in the community, even though I might not be good at it. It doesn't really matter. I think the times, again, when we do things hands-on, I love giving money, but I argue I don't make enough money to give $45,000. But I have a lot of time and a lot of willingness. And I think that's what Rotary is about. Putting some effort in those places when we talk about being priceless. And some of the volunteer work we do, I consider priceless. What does service above self mean to me? It means I will do what some other people do not want to do. I will help when other people don't want to help. So I'm not the person to let people slide. I know people like Jeff Isles, and I will say, Jeff, we need such and such up at Keystone. I can work at convincing you pretty much anything if I believe in it. So service above self to me is about being able to do the kind of work that needs to get done. That's not pretty. It's not necessarily fun, but you get to drive by, ride by, do whatever from time to time and see the kind of work you've done and be grateful that you were able to do it and you didn't lose any body parts in doing it.
Barbara doesn't know, but she was the first one I asked, and she was the first one to say yes. Thank you. With that, I now have the privilege of introducing Sue. If you'll come up and share your story with us, we'll look forward to hearing more about Sue. So thank you all. By the way, a lot of what we're learning about today is connection.
Feels like a long time since I've stood in front of people with COVID. So thank you for the opportunity. I am Sue Hansen. I grew up in Carroll, Iowa, went to Carroll Kemper, and we get a lot of jokes in our family because my dad was a high school football coach and a basketball coach for men. And then he had 3 daughters that he sent to the Catholic school. So he always knew where we were at, he said, because everybody reported in. So one of my high school class was about 230. In my graduating class, I had a great group of friends that as I've gone through life, not everybody had that experience where I am still very close to my high school friends. There was probably about 20 of us girls and boys that hung out. My husband said, I need to quit talking about this, but one of my best friends was Nick Nurse, who did the Iowa Energy and the Raptors. So a lot of us have fun when we get together at our high school reunions, and we always go to church first in the school and then go out and have a good time. So that is where I'm from. Then I went to Iowa State University. And now I am at Wells Fargo Home Mortgage in downtown Ames. It used to be the Brenton Bank. So I was with Brenton Bank for about 7 years, and then Wells Fargo purchased them. And how I got into Rotary is Linda Dasher used to be on the board of directors at Brenton Bank. And she decided that it would be best for all of us young ladies and men to get involved in Rotary and get to know more people. So that's when I started in Rotary. Some of the skills that I would like to master is I would like to work on utilizing technology and various platforms to enhance my marketing and outreach. I have a team of people that work with me, and they are 20 years younger than I am. So we say I'll bring the wisdom, and then they need to help me with the technology so I can be more efficient. It becomes quite a joke each week. Let's see. What is the luckiest, most fortunate thing that has happened to me? I had two great mentors when I started in banking. One was a woman and one was a gentleman. And they always could take all of the different people in the bank, and they looked at their personalities, what they were good at, their strengths and weaknesses, and then mentored us into roles where we could be successful. I hope that as I continue on my career, that I can also help young people to be much better than I ever was, and also look at what are their strengths and weaknesses and how can we help them grow. What are some of the events in your life that made you who you are? I would say raising children has taught me a lot. A bank merger between Brenton and Wells Fargo. That was quite an experience. Health, family issues when I was growing up. One of my good friends, her and I, right after the bank merger, many of you may know Kevin Geis. He was our leader at Brenton Bank, but he encouraged some of us to go through the Dale Carnegie class. We don't hear too much about that anymore, but we had to go and stand up and step outside of our boundaries and our comfort zone. So we learned a lot through that. What is the best piece of advice you've ever given and why? I was told to develop mental toughness so fear does not hold you back from achieving your goals and having a good life. As for Rotary, I would say that one of the things I regret and would like to do more in the future is when I was working full-time, and the hours I was keeping and raising two young men with the help of my husband, I didn't feel like I could take the extra time to go and volunteer at Rotary or do some of the different things at the church. So I did a lot of counseling with my customers, not just for their mortgage, but also trying to get their finances in line and things like that. So now that my children are out of, one of them is out of college, the other one is a junior in college, that's one of my goals, is to get more involved in Rotary and some of the other activities in the community.
Thank you, Sue. Again, a real inspiration to hear what's occurring in each of our lives. Next, I'd like to have John step up and share some of his background and story. And John, how many times do you get to perform with a grand piano and Louis' talent?
I was born and raised a Cub, 9 miles east of here in neighboring Nevada. High school activities included music, percussion in the band, chorus, swing choir, I'm a bass. Sports, cross-country basketball, baseball. Attended and graduated from Luther College, a member of the baseball team all 4 years. First job after Luther was at First National Bank at 5th and Burnett here in Ames, Iowa as an officer trainee. Eventually, I determined I wanted something other than a career in retail banking. 2 further degrees, master's and a doctorate at the University of Iowa, the latter in higher education administration. My career in higher education was spent on the campuses of small liberal arts colleges, first at Ohio Wesleyan in Delaware, Ohio, and later Wofford College in Spartanburg, South Carolina, serving at both places as an assistant baseball pitching coach. However, the bulk of my career was in administration at Loras College in Dubuque as a registrar, and at my alma mater, Luther, as director of assessment and institutional research, from which I just retired in not too long ago in June 2019. I am married to Janine. We met in Iowa City, singing in the same church choir. And we still, to this day, sing in a church choir here in Ames at St. Andrew's Lutheran Church. We moved to Ames in June 2019. We attend Iowa State events, programs. We love to travel, community garden, Janine more than me, and volunteer. Besides Rotary Board, I'm a trustee for the Ames Public Library and volunteer once a week at the Ames History Museum. Janine serves on the St. Andrews Council and recently became treasurer of Raising Readers in Story County. In addition to Janine, some of my other loves, I love to read, predominantly nonfiction with memoirs, biographies. My favorite choice, a favorite book, The Tinder Bar by J.R. Moehringer. Also an avid reader of newspapers in any form. I love listening to music. Growing up, I was a huge Billy Joel fan. I know the entire catalog, all his songs, all the lyrics. I came late to the Dave Matthews Band, and now I can't get enough. They tour all the time, so that's on my bucket list, getting to a Dave Matthews Band concert. Other artists I frequently listen to include Sarah Bareilles, David Gray, Liz Wright, Natalie Merchant, Peter Gabriel, Alanis Morissette. I love to work out, brisk walking, dumbbell weightlifting, and rowing machine. I also love the challenge of golf and particularly enjoy walking 18 holes at Coldwater here in Ames. Several memorable experiences. The year was 1983, my junior year in college. The local Hardee's sponsored a contest where you could enter your name for a chance at a half-court shot at halftime of a Luther basketball game. You guessed it. My name was drawn. I got on the court. I proceeded to bank in a half-court shot. Good for charbroiled burger. No, not charbroiled burgers. It was $250 and a lot of slaps on the back and high fives from friends and fellow students. The year was 1999. I was coming home from a work conference from Washington, D.C. on TWA, remember that airline? With connection through St. Louis. While boarding the plane in DC, noticed both Senators Grassley and Harkin were on the flight. I disembarked ahead of them. I had my small paper ticket stub, remember that, and a pen. Grassley and his staffers came first. Senator Grassley, I'm from Iowa. We lived in Wisconsin at the time. Can I get your signature? Sure, he was very cordial, kind. Harkin came along 30 seconds later. Senator Harkin, I'm from Iowa. Can I get your signature? Same thing. Looked at the ticket stub. Grassley signed, your Senator, Chuck Grassley. Harkin, not to be outdone, signed, your friend, Tom Harkin. It's one of those great keepsakes that I still have. As for Rotary, I've been a Rotarian since 2003 when I joined the Decorah Club. I was club president there 2008-09, and soon to be 3 years here with our club. What I enjoy most about this club, obviously the people, and I like serving out in the community, service activities. Thank you.
That was fun. That was so great learning so much about our fellow Rotarians, but we are running a little short on time. I don't think we have any more slides, so let's go ahead and stand for the four-way test. Of the things we do and say, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you. Ding.